From New York Times Opinion, I'm Carlos Lozada.
I'm Michelle Cottle.
I'm Ross Douthat.
And I'm Lydia Polgreen.
And this is Matter of Opinion, Summer Reading Edition. So, if this summer you take even a few vacation days, maybe relax at the local pool, get away to the beach, you might take a book or two along to pass the time. And we are here to help. Today we're going to talk about some of our favorite summer reads, books we love that we hope will make it into your beach bag. And also, let's get into our own reading plans for the summer. Who wants to go first? How about you, Michelle?
Okay, I'm jumping right in here, and I am shunning all of the highbrow potential and going for killer beach reading.
A woman after my own heart.
There you go. This works perfectly with umbrella drinks and lots of suntan lotions. So it's a series of murder mysteries centered on 4 British pensioners, and it's known as the Thursday Murder Club books, which is the name of the first installment of this. Now, I am not a fan of the mystery genre generally, but I have a friend who basically forced me to read the first book of these, and they are flat out brilliant. They're funny, zippy, good plotting, good characters, but what makes them unusual is that the characters are all in their 70s, and this advanced age plays a role in kind of how they approach things like death and loss and punishment and justice. They're kind of all staring down their mortality, the mortality of loved ones, and it gives the series a really interesting perspective and a real emotional kind of oomph. The author's Richard Osman. He's a Brit TV presenter. And here's where I want to make a plea to the TV gods. These would make a genius show. Like Netflix, if you're out there. There's said to be a film adaptation coming, but I'm kind of convinced that these days TV would be better. And I've already helpfully started my dream casting with this. Helen Mirren.
So it's called the Thursday Murder Club. I've heard of it, but I haven't read it. Is the idea that they have a club before they start solving the first murder? What is the way in?
What happens on Thursday?
Yeah. and how can we avoid it?
Some retirement communities have shop or pickleball or Zumba. These folks, one of them used to be an MI6 or whatever, and they originally were looking into cold cases. That was the whole thing. They would look into cases that had been sitting around, whatever. But then as these things go on, people more contemporary start dropping like flies. And, you got a body over here and a body over there. And
are most of the murders in their sort of elderly zone? I mean, this is I was a long time Agatha Christie reader back in the day. And
I'm getting Miss Marple vibes.
Yeah.
But the best thing with Miss Marple, it was there are so many murders in 3 tiny English villages, right?
Or Murder, She Wrote, of course.
Yeah.
Maine
the
town.
most murder-happy part of Maine.
Maine is the most dangerous place to be, as we all learned.
She did end up traveling a fair bit, to be fair, but yeah.
These are mostly local. They're not all pensioners who are dropping. You can be any age and drop dead. It spans.
How many books are there now, roughly?
There are only 3 right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's doable. That's good. That's good.
a reasonable body count.
And they're a very quick read. So there's a 4th coming out in September.
As long as it's not a George R.R. Martin situation where we'll be waiting forever.
Oh, dear God. No, there's no sigils. You do not spend 16 days on how the pheasant was prepared. No. I'm just saying.
Sorry. It's the harshest dig at Martin is always his feast scenes.
I love it. I mean, he's just cashing his checks, hanging out in Santa Fe.
Yeah, why would he bother at this point?
Why would he bother? But I just wanted to say that I love the generosity of a series recommendation. Tana French was my go-to for a long time. I've read all of those. Currently working my way through the Slow Horses series, which of course is on Apple TV.
I watched that show.
Yeah.
But I have not read the book.
The TV show is fantastic, and I've been really trying not to get too far ahead of it. But, I'm an easy mark for an ongoing series of books with consistent characters.
Lydia, why don't you go next then? You're on a roll. Tell us what to read.
I feel like this is a bit of a blue stocking beach read recommendation, but
I am cool with that.
I'm gonna go ahead and make it anyway. I've been telling anyone who would listen about a book that I recently read that is not a new book. It was published in 1980, and the book is called Transitive Venus, and it's by Shirley Hazzard. And I mean, how to describe this book? The plot is actually incredibly simple. It's a couple of orphaned young women in post-war Britain. They're originally from Australia. Their parents died in a terrible accident. One is fair-haired and she marries a bureaucrat. The other is dark-haired and slightly more mysterious, and she falls in love with a completely inappropriate and unavailable man who's a playwright. And the third sort of character in this is a young astronomer named Ted Tice, who is in love with the dark-haired one. And it's a saga and a love story, but it's one of those books that I tried to read a few times and just couldn't get into it. And then once it kind of sucked me into its vortex, I just couldn't let go. And it's really about what we think we know about life and what actually happens. And I know that sounds incredibly vague, but as a person who's, in middle age now, marching towards 50, I'm thinking a lot about my past and the decisions that I've made that have brought me to where I am today. And this is a book that really sort of captures and encapsulates that feeling of, the sort of recklessness of youth and then getting to a place where you realize all the places that you went wrong and all the serendipity that brought you joy that you didn't expect. And I think that the thing that most endeared me to this book is that in the first couple of paragraphs, you learn the whole story, but you have no idea you're learning the whole story. So, you get to the end of the book and there is just
Spoiler alert, Lydia Polgreen.
No. I'm telling you, it's not a spoiler because you'll never know. You'll never know. You get to the end of the book and you just think, my God, how did I miss so much? And I immediately turned to the first page and started reading again because I wanted to be ravished by the plot with the knowledge of what I already knew, which is like kind of the opposite of a spoiler. The writing is extraordinary. It's just some of the most exquisite sentences you can imagine, this piercing insight into human nature. I loved this book, and I think more and more people should be reading it.
All right, I'm writing that down. Transit.
Lydia, you're making me think of a book I just read called Trust by Hernan Diaz,
yes.
Which is a book that sort of the more you read, the less you realize you actually know about the story. And yet it's not disorienting. It's actually beautiful. Yeah. It's sort of layered in that way. And the moment you finish, you want to go back immediately to start again.
Yeah, I'm an obsessive rereader. Like I love, Middlemarch is my favorite book, and I love to read it again and again and again. And I love books that reward rereading.
Okay, I've got to admit, I was underwhelmed by Trust.
Oh.
Ooh.
I'm just going to say it. I'm sorry I read it. I just,
Oh, I love Trust.
I got the
That's
gimmick.
okay.
I did get the gimmick. The gimmick was good.
Takes all kinds.
It's not a gimmick.
It's a gimmick.
It's a technique.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a
Tomato,
gimmick.
potato.
Wait, Ross.
Well, next summer we can talk about it. So I'll go next. I'm going to cheat and do middlebrow, highbrow combination because I know Carlos will have like 17.
No.
But the reality is we go to Maine more than anywhere else in the summer, and the core of my summer reading has always been Stephen King. Appropriate to the Maine setting, appropriate to the beach. One of my formative childhood memories was reading King's The Stand on a very crowded Maine beach and just sitting there and thinking about, how many people would be transmitting the super flu in that novel to how, getting more and more uncomfortable with each passing page. And King, I would say late career Stephen King is not as good as early career Stephen King. But a couple of years ago, I read The Institute, which was one of his more recent novels about children with psychic powers, and enjoyed that a great deal. That was the closest recent King that sort of approximated the experience of reading The Stand or The Shining or something as a kid. So that's one. And then the highbrow choice is everyone should read, and what better time to read it than over the summer, Rebecca West's Black Lamb and Grey Falcon. If you're looking to take a really large, totally insane travelogue about the complexities of Balkan Eastern European history with you to a world where your cell phone won't disturb you and Twitter won't bother you, you really can't do better than this book. West wrote it based on a bunch of trips she took to what was then Yugoslavia just before World War II. And I read it, probably late 1990s, early 2000s. And the book is all about how much Rebecca West loves the Serbs, who are, sort of at that point a symbol of defiance against German authoritarianism. And of course, by the time the late 1990s come around, Serbia has a rather different valence in world politics. But since we're in a moment of Slavic conflict, warfare in the marches of Europe once again, it's just Again, it's incredibly long and filled with insane historical generalizations, many of which don't make any sense. And yet it's a great example of an individual talent going to a particular place and yielding just a really, really, really fascinating document that does happen to be like 900 pages long. So,
This seems more like a martini book than a margarita book, I gotta tell you, Ross.
Disagree.
This may be after the beach.
Disagree.
Post-beach.
It might be an ouzo book.
I can't take a book that big to the beach. It's just the sand.
It has to be one, right? You take like the one book.
Take the
like,
one.
My philosophy of beach reads is either you take like that one massive thing you've always meant to read, or you take like 3 short books. And deciding that is a big deal. It's like it's a great source of stress for me. Every time I have to figure out, like, am I going to do the big book or am I going to do, 3 books I've wanted to get to?
Yeah, I take the multiple just in case, because life is too short for me to read a book I'm not enjoying anymore. Like, if I don't like it, it has about 40 pages to grab me before I'm jettisoning that bad boy.
Carlos, let's hear it.
All right, so
the man we've been waiting for.
No, please, no.
Dun, dun.
I hope some of you have read and loved Harriet the Spy, the wonderful book by Louise Fitzhugh, which I certainly did. I wanted to name my daughter Harriet. My wife wouldn't let me. That's not the book I'm going to recommend. I am going to recommend the lesser-known sequel to Harriet the Spy called The Long Secret, which is a perfect beach read. It actually takes place in a beach town where Harriet is spending the summer, immediately after the events in Harriet the Spy. You don't have to have read Harriet the Spy to appreciate and to love The Long Secret. It may help, but they are independent books. And what I love about it is that it captures how different, like, just summertime is when you're a kid. How it's like this place that's just distinct from the rest of your life. I have read The Long Secret many times, many summers. It is just a lovely, lovely book. The other one, I'll pull a Ross, and the other one I will briefly recommend is more in the category of like the massive book you bring to the beach or wherever you go. It's Conversación en la Catedral, Conversation in the Cathedral by Mario Vargas Llosa. I'm not a Vargas Llosa completist. I'm trying to get there, but this is his greatest work, like, period. Don't take my word for it. He has said that if he had to save but one of his novels from the fire, it would be this. The cathedral, by the way, is not a cathedral. The cathedral is the name of a bar. And there is a conversation that begins at the very beginning of the book that ends up running through, little by little, the entire novel. A lot of people have read, Aunt Julie and the Scriptwriter or The Feast of the Goat. Those are wonderful books. But this is it. This is the Vargas Llosa book.
I feel cheated that you guys cheated. I mean, I just was really strict with myself.
Right.
Chose one book. Michelle, back me up here, like.
I didn't get that memo.
Technically, Michelle chose several books, a series,
so
if
I'm
you will.
the only. Who would have thought that I'd be the only true rule follower on this podcast?
Well, I think you should be allowed to cheat then in the next section.
Yes. Lydia, let's put your bookmark in that thought. When we come back, we will share the books that we are looking forward to reading this summer. Welcome back to the Matter of Opinion Book Club. So let's get to our own summer reading plans. Lydia, why don't you tell us one or more books that you're excited about?
Nope. I am extremely disciplined. I only have the one. And I am a fan of it seems like many of us are, the brick-sized book that you bring to the beach and read. I was once on a fully rained-out vacation in Turks and Caicos where I read all of Ron Chernow's biography of Grant. My wife kept poking at me and being like, wait, like, we're at the beach, what are you doing? And I was just incredibly thrilled to be reading it.
You were like, he's about to take Vicksburg. Leave me alone.
Real page turner. You don't need to not know what's going to happen next to have your heart in your throat in that book. I love a big biography. So this summer, at the beach, I'm going to be taking on King, A Life by Jonathan Eig. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. So This has been one of the most anticipated biographies of the year, if not even longer than that. And I think we're living in a time right now where everyone's trying to co-opt the legacy of Martin Luther King for their own purposes. And the real man is, of course, much more complex than any of us would like to admit. And there's already been some news that's come out of this book. Apparently, Alex Haley, who wrote the autobiography of Malcolm X and was a very celebrated journalist who also wrote Roots, apparently he completely fabricated something that everybody thought they knew about Martin Luther King, which is that he disapproved of Malcolm X. So already this biography is reframing how we think about this incredibly important and pivotal figure in American history. And so that is the thing that I'm planning to read. And I'm going to stop there because I want to hear what you guys have to say.
So I will go next. This is the dichotomy of the summer books, like either the big book or the shorter and multiple books. And I think I'm going in that direction this summer. So since they add up to one book, I'm going to share all of them.
You're cheating again.
So I'm a big fan of Flannery O'Connor's short fiction. I love her book of essays called Mystery and Manners, which is just wonderful if you haven't read it. I have never read Wise Blood, her first novel.
Oh, this is on my list too.
And wonderful. I am dying to read it. I got it a while ago. Like Michelle said, I don't want to waste time. I don't want to just be lukewarm about a book. And so I have this pile that gets bigger and shorter throughout the year. Things get culled, things don't make the cut. Right now, Flannery O'Connor's Wise Blood is there. Nora Ephron's Heartburn. I have always been told how wonderful this is. So that is on the list.
Bonus recommendation for our listeners. The audiobook of Heartburn is read by Meryl Streep.
Oh, wow. I am so anti-audiobook, but I may have to break that rule.
That's worth it.
For that. And Paul Beatty's The Sellout, which I am very eager to read. It came out 2015, I believe. It's supposed to be a wonderful kind of satire on race in America, and I'm super excited to read it. Those are my beach reads this summer that I can't wait to dig into. Ross.
Well, so I used to read tons and tons of contemporary fiction, and somewhere in the last 10 years, my capacity to do it has fallen apart. I was thinking though of reading Hernan Diaz's Trust. But if it's a mixed verdict...
No, do it.
Do not listen.
Oh,
do
fine.
not listen to Michelle.
I trust Michelle. She saved me from my fixations on UFOs. I think, I don't know, she
Ross
might
and
be...
I have an understanding.
Might be a trustworthy voice. But anyway,
you have to keep believing,
I was
Ross.
thinking of reading that. The book that I've actually ordered is a book that came out a few years ago called Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli, the epic story of the making of The Godfather, which, in spite of being many Americans of a certain age, a Godfather obsessive, I have never read. But this book is supposed to be terrific. And, I'm not that happy with the state of American movies, so I'm thinking I'll bury myself in a different era in U.S. movie making when incredible alchemies were still possible.
Sounds awesome.
That's brilliant.
Michelle.
All right, I'm going to close it out here. I have to read a lot of truly awful books for work, or at least start them and then abandon them midway. So I mostly stick to fiction. And it is the rare nonfiction book that I will go all the way through, but I have one next to me that I am confident it is Dave Grann's The Wager, a tale of shipwreck, mutiny, and murder. And I know that I will love it because I love everything Dave writes. I have known him for going on 30 years. His books take the deepest dive imaginable. He's an obsessive, and he gets in there and finds everything there is to know. This is about an 18th century British shipwreck where they wind up on this godforsaken island and just go all Lord of the Flies. You almost think it can't be true because it's so bizarre. And I am ready to just hunker down and tear through this.
Grann is so good. The books they often cite about him are Killers of the Flower Moon,
Fantastic
Lost City
book.
of Z.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's one that I think is a little bit of a shorter book, lesser known, but I just loved as well, called The White Darkness.
Read it? Loved it.
It's a journey across Antarctica, the sort of plight of the explorer. It's wonderful. I had the chance to interview him about it at the National Book Festival a few years ago, and I was riveted.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I feel like we figured this out. We all know what we're going to read.
We've gone from children's novel to whatever it is that Ross is carrying around about the Serbs? And what are you doing?
Black lamb and gray falcon.
Okay.
Okay, Harriet the Spy and The Long Secret are not solely children's books.
Yeah.
They can be enjoyed by children. They can be enjoyed by all of us.
What section of the bookstore am I finding them in, Carlos?
I'm trying to remember if I read The Long Secret, which shows if I did that I didn't appreciate it.
Outstanding. It is outstanding. Don't read Sport, which was the third book they did. I believe she wasn't finished with it. It was kind of posthumously put together. I never trust those because the author wasn't really done.
That's what I tell people about all my columns. I'm like, yeah, I know.
All right, well, let's turn the page from our book recommendations. When we come back, we're going to hear from you. So recently we asked you, Matter of Opinion listeners, about your own summer reading plans. And here is what you had to say.
Hello, Matter of Opinion. My name is Lee Catalano, and I'm calling from Portland, Oregon.
Hi, I'm Gordon from Massachusetts.
Susan, I'm calling from Albany, New York.
This is Jordan from Colorado. I'm calling to give you my summer read recommendation. My recommendation is the Three-Bodied Problem trilogy. With all the UFO and kind of alien excitement happening, it's really just a great read to get you thinking about aliens.
The Fisherman and the Dragon, Fear, Greed, and a Fight for Justice on the Gulf Coast by Kirk Wallace Johnson.
I'd like to recommend for summer reading Natasha Pulley's 2021 novel, The Kingdoms, a perfect genre mashup of alternative history and time travel, topped with a sweet romance.
The Education of Kendrick Perkins. Kendrick Perkins was a longtime player in the NBA, now ESPN commentator. But this isn't really your typical sports autobiography. It's really more just about a young man growing up in the world, coming from the country, moving to the city, and dealing with all sorts of things he never really had to deal with or think about before.
I'm not much for summer reading. I just like a good book. And the one you should read this summer is Demon Copperhead.
I would recommend Still Life by J. Hopper. It's a good poetry book, and I just recommend it.
I am just starting to read The Tempest. I took a free class for veterans, acting class in the city for several months, and I auditioned, and I'm going to be in The Tempest, part of the community ensemble Shakespeare in the Park this summer. So I want to wrap my head around it.
Hi, this is Holly Kane. I'm calling from North Carolina. A friend recently suggested the Maisie Dobbs series to me, and I read the first book, and I'm thinking I may binge the rest this summer. It just reminds me of reading Nancy Drew in the summertime when I was a girl.
Thanks to everyone who shared their book recs with us. As always, follow Matter of Opinion on your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends, especially your book club friends, to listen to the show. Matter of Opinion is produced by Phoebe Lett, Sophia Alvarez-Boyd, and Derek Arthur. It is edited by Stephanie Joyce. Our fact-check team is Kate Sinclair, Mary Marge Lager, and Michelle Harris. Original music by Isaac Jones, Carol Saburo, and Pat McCusker. Mixing by Pat McCusker. Audience strategy by Shannon Busta and Christina Samuelewski. Our executive producer is Annie Rose Strasser.